So Michael Popok, Legal AF. Jack Smith's grand jury is still in business. It didn't put itself out of business last Tuesday when it issued another indictment against Donald Trump for all things Jan 6th. It's still in business. There was no going out of business sale, but you can't start talking about where Jack Smith is going next unless you know where he's been. You have to know the witnesses that have already testified could still be brought back in front of the grand jury. And then I'm going to talk on this hot take about a handful of witnesses that we know that Jack Smith's team is arranging to bring back in front of the grand jury. That didn't stop. The indictment was a comma against Donald Trump, not a period. Let's first start with what I said is the way to analyze this. Who has already testified for Jack Smith? You know, we've done a lot of these hot takes individually, but it's nice to kind of round it all together and pull it together in one neat package. I'm going to give you the rundown right now, and then I'm going to tell you who I think could be brought in to testify in front of the grand jury again. Let's start with former Vice President Mike Pence. These are all people who have already testified for Jack Smith, had any privilege that was even possibly asserted, attorney-client or executive or otherwise, stripped away, and they've testified, no Fifth Amendment being asserted. Pure testimony in front of a grand jury under oath. Mike Pence, Mark Meadows, former chief of staff, Pence's aides, Greg Jacobs and Mark Short, former White House deputy chief of staff, Dan Scavino, former White House speechwriter, Stephen Miller, former Trump lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Yes, he testified, didn't take the Fifth Amendment. Trump attorney and advisor, Boris Epshteyn. Giuliani is one of the co-conspirators, and Boris Epshteyn is co-conspirator number 6 listed in the indictment. They've testified. Former White House counsel Pat Cipollone, former Department of Homeland Security official Ken Cuccinelli, former Director of National Intelligence John Ratliff, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, Chairman of the Nevada Republican Party, Michael McDonald, former White House aide, Nick Luna, former White House Personnel Director, John McEntee, former Trump Campaign Deputy Director, Gary Michael Brown, Stop the Steal organizer, Ali Alexander, and numerous so-called fake electors from multiple states. And we know the list goes on and on and on of people who have gone in to testify, including the person that helped arrange the fake electors on the ground game and his assistant as well. So that's who's already gone in. Mark Meadows, prominently featured there, although he is whisper quiet in terms of being mentioned in the indictment. I do a whole nother hot take on why I think Mark Meadows is missing in action in the indictment itself. Not listed as a co-conspirator, but also only a sprinkling of Mark Meadows in several paragraphs, whereas Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Ken Cheeseborough, Sidney Powell, Boris Epshteyn are all prominently featured, right? So who's left and why? Why is Jack Smith continuing to develop evidence? Because there are still threads of investigative lines of inquiry that need to be followed up and followed through as Jack Smith prepares for the inevitable, the superseding indictment. Yes, you heard me say it. The amended indictment, the new indictment, the one against Donald Trump that can add new counts, not new evidence on existing counts, but new counts against Donald Trump. And future indictments, individual indictments against one or all 6 of the co-conspirators, and even people that weren't named anywhere in the indictment, but we know you're out there, and so does Jack Smith. I'm looking at you, Jenna Ellis. I'm looking at you, other lawyers that participated in the scheme around the country to try to defeat democracy in the courthouse. And there's a handful of lawyers that were involved in that area. I'm not sure Evan Corcoran, the lawyer for Donald Trump on all things Mar-a-Lago, despite his appearance in the courtroom during the arraignment, I'm not sure he's out of the woods yet. I'm not sure that the other lawyers like Christina Bobb, who fraudulently signed a certificate under penalty of perjury, that everything in Mar-a-Lago and in the envelope was all that existed about top secret information. I'm not sure she's out of the woods yet. Alina Hoppe testified. I'm not sure she's out of the woods yet. So there's a group of, this is back to the old Don Rumsfeld line. There's the known knowns and the known unknowns. There's the known knowns, which are the co-conspirators which are listed. There's also the known unknowns, which is a group of people that have been all over, for instance, the Jan 6 report and all the evidence that was developed there. And we know Jack Smith knows about as well because he got all the Jan 6 material and then added on. It was like Jan 6 Committee Plus. It's like a streaming service for Jack Smith and all the new witnesses that he developed and all the new evidence that he developed for new claims, superseding indictment, individual indictment. Did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Inspired by NASA, Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics and makes temperature-regulating bedding so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. Using silver-infused fabrics originally inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, so you get better sleep every night. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than bed sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo LegalAF at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you're not 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf and use the code LegalAF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40%. Again, that's trymiracle.com/legalaf to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Who's coming up next for the grand jury that, again, is still open for business? Let's start with Bernie Kerik. Bernie Kerik, former disgraced commissioner for the New York City Police Department, his clemency was given, not pardon, but clemency to commute a sentence related to tax fraud that Donald Trump decided, because he's a buddy of Rudy Giuliani, that he was going to give the guy clemency. And then Kerik hooked up with Rudy Giuliani and became his investigator to investigate voter fraud. Spoiler alert, they didn't find any. And they reported that to Donald Trump, which undermines his whole case. Bernie Kerik didn't want to turn over his documents and all of his notes and his files and his records and all his investigative reports until Rudy Giuliani got in trouble with Judge Beryl Howell in the D.C. Circuit Court in a defamation case brought by 2 Fulton County election workers called Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman. And as a deal to avoid basically having the equivalent of the death penalty thrown at him by the judge and have Giuliani lose the case because if he was playing fast and loose with his responsibilities to turn over documents and retain documents, they allowed, and Donald Trump's campaign allowed, Bernie Kerik to turn over all of his files, not only in the case, but give it over to Jack Smith. And now Jack Smith is busy arranging for Bernie Kerik to come in. And I know the topic of the conversation. It's going to be Team Crazy, and captain of Team Crazy was Rudy Giuliani. And Rudy Giuliani, you know, I've said his name a million times on Hot Takes. It's the first time I ever said Rudy Giuliani. That made stick. But Rudy was responsible for the 80 lawsuits around the country and all the other ways that they pressured the elected officials and state houses. And Bernie Kerik reported dutifully that he couldn't find any fraud. And there wasn't any fraud, and there weren't dead people voting, and there weren't people voting out of precinct, and there weren't people double voting, and there wasn't software that was flipping votes from Trump to Biden. And there wasn't any fraud that was outcome determinative, meaning enough to overcome the electoral advantage and the popular vote advantage of one Joe Biden. So that Bernie Kerik, he's got to testify now in front of a grand jury about all things related to Rudy Giuliani and that aspect of the conspiracy. Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State of Georgia, who got a phone call from Mark Meadows and Donald Trump pressuring him to try to find about 12,000 votes among friends, throw out votes, and keep Donald Trump in power. That pressure campaign, Raffensperger, who testified to Fani Willis's Fulton County DA grand jury, has yet to testify in front of the grand jury for Donald Trump against Donald Trump by Jack Smith, and that's being scheduled. Rusty Bowers, former Speaker of the House until he was thrown out, Republican. Arizona, who testified to the Jan 6 committee and spoke to Jack Smith's group but hasn't testified about the pressure campaign brought by one Donald Trump, calling Rusty Bowers of Rudy Giuliani, trying to promote some sort of fraud theory to get Rusty Bowers to not follow his constitutional duties to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Former governor of Arizona, Doug Ducey, is scheduling a time to come in before the grand jury, but hasn't yet. Ducey is a Republican, but no longer the governor of Arizona. He stepped down. He declared once and for all that there was no voter fraud or there was no problems with the election integrity of Arizona. And Mike Pence, who was very close to Doug Ducey, made a phone call and a pressure campaign on behalf of Donald Trump to try to overthrow the election in Arizona. So we've got Kerrick, Raffensperger, Rusty Bowers, and Doug Ducey, and others who could be brought back in. And I'm looking at you, Mark Meadows, because it's likely that Mark Meadows, although he's not prominently featured chapter and verse in the indictment, is able to cooperate on multiple topics. All roads lead through Mark Meadows. You want to talk about the voter fraud analysis being inaccurate and they're finding no voter fraud, Mark Meadows. The use of the House members like Scott Perry to try to overthrow the election results, Mark Meadows. The use of fake electors, Mark Meadows. The captain of Team Crazy and the recruitment of all the lawyers like Powell, Jenna Ellis, Giuliani, and the like, Mark Meadows. Right? What happened on the ellipse and the use of the riot and the insurrection to cling to power, Mark Meadows. The use of the fake electors to cling to power, Mark Meadows. The use of Mike Pence and the pressure campaign on him to stop the transfer of power, Mark Meadows. So Mark Meadows, I would think, is going to come back in front of and testify again in front of the grand jury. Why? Again, I'll end it with what I started the hot take with, because Jack Smith is not done. We're going to see a superseding indictment, probably based on his track record, his form. If he's true to form, Jack Smith's going to do it within the next month or two after he gets that other shoe to drop, that other nail in the coffin, that one more piece of evidence, that one more or two more witness testimony. And this helps him, Jack Smith and his team, continue to investigate, as he said at the press conference, other individuals other than Donald Trump, future defendants not named Donald Trump. You know where to start, right? The known knowns, the 6 co-conspirators that are already there, and they're very, are very thinly veiled. We know who they are. And then the known unknowns, which are all the other people that we know from the Jan 6 report and reporting and leaks about their role. And they're not out of the woods yet either. And Jack Smith's continuing to apply prosecutorial pressure on them to either cooperate and tell the truth or go under the bus. Either get on the bus or get under the bus. Those are your only 2 choices, right? There's an old line about prosecutors. Prosecutors are a hammer and everyone looks like a nail. And that's where Jack Smith is, the biggest hammer in town, and everybody else looks like a nail. And that's what's going to happen next. I'm going to follow it. I'm going to follow the continued progress of Jack Smith presenting his evidence in front of the grand jury and what spits out the other side of the grand jury, which is usually, and that's their purpose, is indictments and superseding indictments. We'll follow it on the MeidasTouch Network on the YouTube channel. Free subscribe. They're pushing close to 2 million. They want to reach that point before the end of the year. You can follow all of my work also on the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. Go over to playlists. Go down to Michael Popok. You'll see 300 plus of my hot takes just like this one. You like these hot takes? We do something even better. Is that possible? Is it better than a hot take? Maybe. I think so. We stretch together and stitch together all the top stories for the week in a podcast on the MeidasTouch Network. You knew that. It's called Legal AF. It's on Wednesdays and Saturdays, YouTube Live. We're like the number 1 or number 2 YouTube Live the day that we record. And then we have, of course, the traditional audio podcast of that same show that drops everywhere you get your podcasts from Spotify to Google to Apple and all of that. If you like hot takes like this one, give me a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm. Comment, open up a DM with me. I'll have a dialogue with you. And you can follow me, Michael Popok, on all things social media at MS Popok and now on Threads. Until the next hot take, Michael Popok, Legal AF.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.